Attention gamers. A few years ago at the end of Season 10 Uncle Rito removed a few beloved items from the Rift. It was a sad day. We held a funeral for them as many guest speakers reminisced about the fun times they had with these items, before they disappeared from streaming forever after trying to cancel someone for being sus with minors. You walked Voyboy so that others could run. But some of these items have been added back to the game. Namely Statikk Shiv, which is becoming a meta-defining item on one champ in particular, Jhin. Now a lot of people in the comments will be saying this isn't a thing anymore because its stats are getting nerfed, but the reason it's so effective on the 4 actually has nothing to do with its stats, but rather its little static shits that give an ADC the biggest range on a CC of any champ in the game. As an example, picture a game where a horny hay bag gets caught trying to plot a dank surprise party and has to flash to safety. He thinks he's in the clear indicated by his suck stop, but once you get there, killing a minion triggers a chain reaction that lets you root him all the way from downtown Disney World all by yourself, getting your team a pick without having to expend any resources except for a W, which is why no amount of nerfs to this item will ever make it not viable for good Jhin players. In that same game we were getting absolutely shit on and they were pushing our base, and until this interaction allowed me to pick one away from the herd on their escape run, zoom out and eventually score a double kill, which single-handedly turned the tides of a losing game into this. And do you want to know how it ended? We still lost because my sped ape of a jungler AFK'd and we gave up. But let's talk about how I found this tech. The other day I was using one of those apps that gives recommended builds so I don't have to use my own brain, but then I noticed it had a section showing what pros were building on this champ in recent games, and I noticed they were all rushing Statikk Shiv. The app with this feature is called Porofessor. It's free and full transparency. They are paying me to give them compliments, but that's easy to do as they have in-game scouting reports, pre-game ban recommendations telling me to ban Twitch.
No cure for fools.
Ways to import recommended runes directly into the client, and a bunch of stuff in game like jungle camp timers and summoner spell trackers, so that when the enemy is left with nothing at level 2, you can mark it instead of having to ping it in chat and do math to know if they are backup or not. It has sick post-game reports, and if you use my link in the description to get all this for free, I will love you forever. Alright, warm welcome back to all our sponsor skippers, and let's introduce my support in this game, Troll Tiki Hut Mao Kai, who upon seeing their bitch bride whiff her bloody tampon knew it was go time on the teeny weeny wizard as I comboed a thin beam, yelled for in his dying face, and nabbed us an easy level 2 KO. And while that was smoother than a buttered up titty, it's worth noting that me and this makeup wearing tree were not always on the same page when it came to our combos, but regardless we had the advantage with a kill, and a new rare friendship was blossoming between randoms on the Rift. This let him operate in his comfort zone, which apparently means flashing onto the full health Vagar. So even though we landed the combo, the Jhin Jizz distributor was not quite at impregnatable levels at this point in the game, but at least we forced Dumbledore's left nut to flash, making it quasi-worth. But my fist bump bro was starting to take the whole I'm just zoning them strategy to a level that was raising my blood pressure, as someone had to babysit the Hogwarts daycare back here if he wants to get paid, and I can't be in 2 places at once, so unfortunately one NPC brain buffoon was gonna have to die on my watch. That said, he may have just got beat up like the last non-boxer who Jake Paul boxed, but he was all like the Yanomamo tribe did, pain on my face all morning for me to not fight, so he flashed onto the David Blaine fetus, and I head over to follow up, vowing that no cuck cage will get in the way of me shouting 4 at the end of this battle, which levels us both up. He lands his ult and then I aim mine towards the wrong zip code, so Anna first name Morg gets away alive. This seemingly pissed off the greedy face painted tree as he called in his boys, some king and a gladiator who nosedives out of skies to help carry out her execution, and at first I was all like dank Autobots assemble type of bullshit, but the second I went back to attend to the Red Robe Academy I realized my budget Marvel cast of superheroes was anything but marvelous. I ran back up to apparently attend the death of Professor Oak before sticking around to make it a worth trade. Zed scared the shit out of me until I realized he was more afraid of me than I was him, so I used the false confidence to zoom out, fire a warning shot, and then put the idiot trying to play an assassin in this meta out of his misery. At this point I had Statikk Shiv built, and you can see that without any real setup, the combo of it prepping enemies to be rooted was already working. This was great and all to see the idea in practice, but I had bigger problems as my support noticed his face makeup was starting to run, so he had to head up north to get it refreshed, which meant it wasn't an opportune time for me to give in to my fetish of getting tied up, so thank God I remembered to use barrier for the first time in my 10-year League of Legends career. And after seeing such a failed attempt at assassination, you would think a female head of the Secret Service was in the area. I knew just what I needed to do.
4, 3, 2, 1.
I lined up a long-range short joke for kill numero uno, and then I zoomed up to inform the pissy prom queen that I wasn't done and that the second I remember how to aim this thing she'll be in a world of pain. Anyways, Obi the IQ deficient oak tree is back and ready to pick a fight behind the Red Robe Academy again, but I'm actually all for this level of aggression, so I follow up knowing there's a chance of being called godlike if it goes well. But despite being on quite the roll, my team was still losing in kills, which was concerning as I quickly learned the enemy had the guy who designed Katniss Everdeen's outfits on their team, and based off his lore, he was enjoying all the grown men being thrown at him in lane. So for context, here is what was taking place on the other side of the rift up until now. You see, my top laner was one of those people who could pour water out of a shoe with the instructions written on the heel. He had the capability to be so many things: a man, a bear, a phoenix, a turtle, but the one thing he very apparently was never going to be, was a good teammate. The lack of learning any lesson as he just continued to run straight up to lane and get slapped around like a fat twerking chick's butt cheeks was making me lose hope in humanity. It got to the point where he couldn't even step up to wave, but he absolutely did not let that stop him from pursuing his hopes and dreams of one day not being a degenerate fuck feeding the enemy top laner. No amount of deaths or losing 1v1s were going to get in this man/bear/pig's head, as he was determined to prove that he could kill the dude who was gapping him more by the minute as he was carried away from safety and cucked once again. I prayed we just get out of laning phase so that the alone time between these two would be put to an end, so the second I saw him rotate mid there was a glimmer of hope and a small window where I could relax my hyper-puckered anus, only to realize that the 2 brain cells he came into the game with were left up top and things weren't going to get any better. Turns out those 2 brain cells couldn't be found up top either, as he indeed did go back up there to check, but the only thing he found was more of the exact same feeding failure montage clips that he has more than enough of already. This was quickly escalating into an all-hands-on-deck emergency situation where multiple men at once were being called in to assist with the shit fest, but this big gay man was all for it. The more the merrier when it came to grown-ass dudes visiting him at home, and he was absolutely benefiting. This was forcing a level of desperation in amongst the boys down here to get ahead and carry against the Fed forces up top, but unfortunately greed rhymes with feed, and when I saw the teleportation notification of Kwame coming down to show me how many kills he had, I was forced to give my shutdown to the menstruating Adam's family mate instead. At one point we did catch these 2 in a worse spot than a raw zucchini at an all-women's prison, but I had to play it slow as shit, knowing that Hagrid's ballsack could push one button and erase the voting majority of my health bar in one global, so we took our time and things were looking good. That is until Booker T showed up late to the party, and even though we had the numbers advantage, my front line was dedicated to being a better window than a door and granting free admission to my personal anus to any legendary tank chasing us down, so I fucked up by thinking 4 is greater than 3 and ended up paying the ultimate price. That said, I had a pretty good arrangement worked out with my support where he would hire a bunch of help from the underground society of his relatives, and I would launch the large triangular simulator of death to contribute to the noble cause of committing a double homicide with my friends. At one point we saw Riot's token gay champ bot lane, and I initially figured I would be too late to get my kill participation, but Viego proved to be impossible to underestimate, which reminded me that this is League of Tanks and a 5% health fed top lane tank could twist my nipples hard enough to make me forget my safe word, so we took it slow and eventually I did that last 5% of his health. After killing Kwame I figured maybe I will just stick with man bear pig and that will stop his feeding. I was completely wrong about the effect that would have on me. And so we were dead, looking to give up, the enemy breaching our base, with a huge advantage, and I knew that if I were to carry this game,
I cannot be good. I must be perfection.
I started loitering in Drake's backyard hoping to get a spot on Kendrick's next rap, and seeing as I was in the area I decided to piss on Deadpool's parade with a deep line drive into left field before hearing my entire team mumble Marco and I was going to be their polo or some shit, when in reality I just wanted to be present to see this golden girl thaw out and hopefully steal some gold for participating. We got in formation like a group of rehearsed drag queens at the Olympics ready to breach the base. We knew the dumb ones in the group wouldn't make it, but I was determined to figure out what this new Hermione bitch does and learn how to kill her. I started following my jungler around the map, not because I thought he could get kills, but I liked his large sword and figured if I was close when he died I could power up a tourney that shit to me in the will, only to realize that my counting services would end up being needed. That ruined simp did end up meeting his maker, which made the bad guys think they could wrangle a toothy water python uninterrupted, but little did they know I arranged a supply chain of death rockets to be launched in their direction, and I wasn't going to discriminate on who received them, no matter what the race, sexuality, or how many kills my brain-dead top laner fed them. I followed up with a rooter scooter on the barbershop employee who went rogue, which long story short was his final moments, and then I escorted the boys towards that chick wizard who I didn't bother learning anything about because I know if it was designed in the last 2 years it's bullshit. We secured Baron, which ended up being a buy one get a free Vagar deal, and things were starting to look up. Then in a brief moment of genius mid, my Statikk Shiv tech was all set to work as it procced. I rooted the bitch and launched the death simulator. Totally an easy kill, no editing, funny business, and then I cut off the escape route of that Katniss fashionista. Team fights were starting to look less like the remedial section of a kindergarten choir, and I was appropriately staying in the back of the fights so that I could distribute damage without having to receive it myself, and my hopes of winning this game were growing. That is until a top lane orgy broke out, and I guess my ult was feeling extra socialism-y that day because everyone shared an equal amount of its damage, and then I was rudely reminded of why so many streamers are quitting League this season. Because tank meta is unfun, total bullshit, and just insufferable to deal with. Please see Exhibit F your IoT. But I stuck to my guns, ready to put my life on the line to defend the northern inhibitor, and even though like a drug-addicted stripper I danced like my life depended on it, a bitch named Zanya invented something that gave me a case of the blue balls and I died. But not long after, I was in a safe place to conduct my business as long boys were being sent via airmail right into the peckers of a bunch of shitters, which wore them down and left Giga Tank Kwame all alone for me to pester until he pissed off, showing that with full build there was now nothing on the rift that I couldn't kill. Except for a jungle camp apparently. That said, the one combo that never failed us all game, where my support brings in a Yellowstone forest tsunami and I zoom way the fuck out to get some nice pictures of all the people it kills, and with it we got a few more. Breached straight into that red color themed base towards the Nexus. It's common practice for all the shitters to believe at the end of the game that their own performance was the reason they won, but I couldn't help feeling like I contributed to a good cause in this one myself, and this Statikk Shiv on Jin Tech was to thank.